Good afternoon, everybody. I'll start off by apologizing for the loud, annoying background sound taking place somewhere outside my house. I don't know where, but they insist on making that racket. I've yelled at them to shut the hell up like more times than I can count, and they don't want to. So, nothing I can do. It was scheduled to go live, so I will keep my commitment, honor my word, and we will get right into the discussion of the album. Today's album we will talk about is my debut album, Impulse, the very first of all my solo albums as Super Kami Guru Alucard. And in this presentation, which if you check the description, there's links below. I could really use some support. If anybody is interested in checking out the album, you can view it on YouTube. It is available under Super Kami Guru Alucard Impulse. But yeah, of course, we would love to get more sales, streams. So please help out and support in any way, especially as an artist when you're sort of in the beginning stages of your career. It does take, fans supporting you and showing their appreciation, buying the albums, streaming them, sharing them. Those are all big, important, crucial things that help. So hopefully anybody could understand that as an artist, when you're not backed by a major label and it's up to you to do all your promotion and marketing and management yourself, it's not always the easiest task, especially if that's not really your area of expertise and you're more of the creative type who just likes to put the good music out there, make the best music possible, and do your thing. Now, with this album was very special for me to make because it was my first professional album. It actually seems to be the most popular on YouTube. One of the songs has my highest amount of views, almost 1,500 at this point, which we will get into later on with the discussion. But I guess we will start right from the beginning of the album. We'll go through each track and I will describe overall the experience of making each song, and then I will talk also a little bit more about just how the album was fully during the journey. But starting off with the record, we have Intro featuring Haruna Mckee, who was actually my girlfriend near the completion of this album. So she did the intro and the outro. We will discuss more of that later. Now, what she says in the beginning of that intro, it's very short, only 5 seconds, but it's pretty much just Super Kami Guru Alucard, I love you so much, because it's the idea of, okay, that's my artist name. If a fan was cheering me on, that's what they would say. And it's kind of funny because when I started making the album, in fact, you'll notice this throughout a lot of the other tracks, I was just calling myself Alucard at that point. The name comes from a very awesome anime I'm a big fan of called Hellsing, and the other mainspring of it, Hellsing Ultimate. The main character, Alucard, which is Dracula backwards, was a really inspiring character because I could relate to him getting destroyed and torn apart so many times, but he always seemed to come back stronger and bring more fuel to the fire every time. So that's how it originally started with the name Alucard. In fact, I was going by that for a while. I was meeting new people when I started making this album. The first two songs were the next one and a later song actually recorded for it, and I was just going by Alucard then. But everybody I knew at the time, too, they were calling me that as my nickname. I've gone through many stage names and nicknames throughout my artist career. They're actually mentioned quite frequently throughout the record. That's why there's another song we will get to later called They Call Me 12 Gauge, is because that was my original name when I was just starting out. But Alucard was that name that just really embodied like the vibe I was going for. You'll hear a lot of sort of references to that, especially with the idea of the song Cool Vibrations we'll talk about too. That actually roots from the Hellsing theme song because Alucard. But yeah, so Super Kami Guru Alucard, I love you so much, because she was my girlfriend at the time. It was very nice to have sort of a Japanese woman I loved, my girlfriend at the time, doing the intro. I thought that was a nice way to start it off because she was actually supposed to do the intro for a song, which is near the end of the record called It's an Adventure. But due to time constraints, I didn't end up getting into the studio when she was here in Canada with me on time. So we had to delay that. We couldn't put her on the record because she'd already gone back to Japan. So she didn't make it on the song. So I thought, well, I'll just get her recording the intro and the outro separately, and that will just sort of be the beginning track and the ending track of the album. So that's how that idea came about. And then track 2, which was actually one of the first songs I recorded for the album. It was one of the first two. It was actually one of the first songs I wrote for this record. And I even performed part of it live at one point when I was dealing with another manager who wasn't really getting a lot done. This guy named Steve, right? And yeah, this song came about, like the inspiration behind this song came from a song from the movie From Dusk Till Dawn, the song After Dark by the Mexicano psychedelic kind of rock band Tito and Tarantula. Now, I'm a big fan of this movie. I actually have George Clooney's autograph. I'll show you. And that's because I'm such a big fan of that movie, From Dusk Till Dawn, one of my favorite movies. And I really like the ideas of like incorporating things from that story. The idea of From Dusk Till Dawn inspired a lot of songs, especially on this record, because there was the idea of vampires, and Alucard was a vampire. And I'd even had these really strange supernatural experiences learning about vampires and weird phenomenon sort of happening right when I was in the middle of writing some of these songs for the record. So it all kind of tied together. In fact, I could honestly say right before I started recording this album, an album that I was listening to a lot, probably consistently, along with a lot of Japanese records, some classics by Tatsuro Yamashita, Taeko Nuki. I was listening a lot to the From Dusk Till Dawn soundtrack. So that had a very big impact on the sound and the vibe I was going for with the record. Now, originally, I wanted the beat to sound more like the Tito and Tarantula song, but it was just hard finding a producer on time to tackle it. And when I heard the actual instrumental produced by Tone Jones, who did a lot of work with me, he produced several songs on this record. But I heard this beat and I had bought this beat off him, and I really liked the vibe of it because it just kind of had this energy of like struggle, but after like sort of the dark time subsided, the past had ended, like things would kind of come to the light and shine brighter. So it had that energy to it, that vibe. And I don't know, I kind of vibed with it, and I was like, okay, this is going to be the beat for After Dark because it's just got that sound I'm going for. And what's great about that too is with this album, I actually produced half of it myself, and the other half was other producers. But it's because the very first one, the intro track, that was all me just recording it, mixing and mastering it. This one was mixed and mastered by the guy working on my current album, Kamar or Daybreak. And he did the mixing and mastering for the majority of the tracks other than the intro and the outro. Those were me. But yeah, with After Dark, it had a very powerful energy to it. It was the first music video I did, which you could check out on my YouTube channel. For some reason, iTunes never, and even YouTube and all the like syncing never seemed to put this as the official music video for it, but it is available on my channel and also my Facebook page if you check it out. So that was kind of a combination of scenes of other music videos that didn't really work out, that never saw the light of day fully. So I ended up taking clips from that and kind of combining it to make a full video, and that became the end result for After Dark's music video. So technically you could say it was the first single of all my sort of singles. So that was After Dark. And then the next track, which comes into play, is the song King of Hamilton, which I had written the idea of several years ago when I was with my ex, Rahima, at the time. And it was a really good idea for a song. In fact, we had done a rough original version on one of my old mixtapes, which I no longer have access to. So don't ask me for it. I wish I knew where all that stuff was. I lost it with a lot of my old computers crashing, my laptops and whatnot. But she sang on the original version and rapped on it. But the idea of the chorus is what I kept mostly because I really like that idea. And then, especially because I had experimented with using alter egos with rapping since even in my high school years when I first started making laptops on my ghetto MSM microphone and a computer. I had done it since then. So I was like, okay, I got to bring the alter egos into this just because that's sort of like a strength, like voice acting almost, to play a different character as a rapper on certain songs. So the two characters that made it on this song, King of Hamilton, were Little Buckingham and then Kira L, which is a combination of Kira from Death Note and L from Death Note, like Kira L. It was originally based on the idea of a character called Killa Mo, which appeared on my gospel rap album, which is available. You could check it out on YouTube under a different name. I went by CRM back then. But if you look up the song Last Days, you would actually get to see where Killa Mo made his first appearance, and then it later got switched to Kira L. So yeah, that was the idea behind that. Bring those alter egos sort of into the story. The main chorus was, about like being the only artist to keep making music, to actually make professional music and keep going out of this city, because there were a lot of talented rappers that I met throughout my musical journey that never actually got to see the light of day as far as artists and actually make professional albums. Like they made mixtapes and then they kind of just vanished off the face of the earth. They gave up on their dreams because it's very difficult to make it in the music industry, especially in Canada. But in Hamilton, like there's just so little opportunities for it. I think most lost confidence and they gave up. It's very sad because I could honestly tell you there were some really amazing rappers that I made songs with back in the day on mixtapes and whatnot that I wish I could help put on still to this day. In fact, I did end up putting on some people from my town on later releases just to show that this town actually does have a lot of talent. There's just not a lot of opportunities to put it out there. Since I'm the only one brave enough and gutsy enough to keep making music and doing my thing, that's why I'm like, well, I'm the king of this town as far as like hip hop music. I'm the only one to keep doing my thing. Now, with the bridge on this song, which I sing in Japanese, it's actually the Japanese version, part of it is anyway, of Why Should I Worry from the soundtrack to the Disney movie Oliver and Company, which is based on Charles Dickens' novel Oliver Twist. Now, I really liked that song, Always, Why Should I Worry by Billy Joel. But the Japanese version was very cool too, and I liked it because it had different lyrics, but similar catchy melody. So I was like, I like the idea because the lyrics are slightly different to translate, but he says, I don't fret, I don't worry. I may not have a dime, but I'm wise in the streets, right? Like that's how you translate what he says, right? Because he's like, Kuyo kuyo shinai, nayama nai. Ichimo nashisa, dakedo chi ga aru. So I was like, okay, that's going to be the bridge because it went with the melody, which had like a really funky upbeat, like sort of beat to it. I love the instrumental with this one because I actually made this one myself. So very proud feeling. It's got some really intense, punchy lyrics. Like Little Buckingham kind of starts it off with some clever, like, references to anime and wordplay and metaphors, and then Kira L comes in with a different style, sort of playing the character with a darker vibe, and then I finish it off with just the true nature, like you're seeing the embodiment of like all the souls within Alucard kind of coming to the forefront, and that was the idea behind that. And I'm very proud of that song overall because that song just really brought to life the idea of like me producing some of my own songs. That was like the first one on the album that I actually did all the instrumentation for myself. Once again, it was mixed and mastered by Daybreak at his studio. That wasn't recorded until a little while later, whereas After Dark came right at the beginning. That one came actually after the breakup with my first Japanese girlfriend, who appeared on another song. So if we're going in chronological order, I figured I would mention as we go along how the songs came about. The next song, which featured two of my other alter egos, Cool Vibrations, which samples a rough interpolation of the melody used for the theme song for the original Hellsing series. And it was that vibe, like that's Alucard music. I gotta have like a beat that sounds like that. I was very demanding and insistent upon that. In fact, I believed I manifested the song to sound that way because I just would not take no for an answer. There had to be a song that just had that melody like that. Da 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 da. And I was very insistent upon it, and that's why the chorus is actually a reflection of the same lyrics the guy who composed that sang when he did Logos Naki World, which is the theme song for Hellsing. And Cool Vibrations, I came up with the title because of the reference he sings in it. Now, the other two alter egos, which had appeared on songs since back in high school, Who I Am was the first time Vlad the Impaler appeared on a song, and he's also on that Last Days I mentioned from the gospel rap album under CRM. And Denying, he was on this really popular mixtape song I had back in the day. I brought his character out, like that deep, intense, raspy voice. Because Little Buckingham's got the British vibe. Kira L's got like the voice effect to make it very low and kind of almost like cybernetic, but like deep, powerful, almost like a dark entity. Denying's got this sticky fingers DOC kind of raspy voice, which I really like the sounds of their voices rapping. So I tried to create a character like that. And then Vlad the Impaler's got like a Romanian accent when he raps, because Vlad the Impaler was actually the nickname Dracula went under. So it's like one of the forms within Alucard. So it was very cool to bring them out. Very interesting, intense lyrics, different vibes, different styles. And then I come in right where the beat switches up, where it's a reference to how the music picks up in the Hellsing theme song too, when my verse starts. And just the idea of that song really came together. It captured the sound of like mixing Japanese anime music with rap, and that to me was a very proud, wonderful accomplishment with that. So that's why that still to this day is probably one of my favorite songs I made. Now, I can't say that that was actually one of the first songs I did. However, I could say that was if I'm being real with myself, I believe that was about the third song I actually recorded for the album. And like I said, that was one that I wrote back at the apartment back when I was with my ex, when I was first brainstorming the idea for the album. And the idea of the album, Impulse, which is why it has a self-titled track, that came about because I was watching Gundam Seed Impulse all the time. And one of the characters I really related to, his Gundam mobile suit was called the Impulse, and I really loved his character, and his suit was cool. So that's where the idea came. And then it also was like, oh, well, I'm very impulsive. I always act on impulse. So, and with this album, all the songs kind of came from impulses. So it was a very reflective title in that regard. But yeah, I want to say Cool Vibrations was probably the third song I did. And then the next song I remember I did was Dance at Dusk, which we'll discuss later. And then I did Midnight Assassin and Impulse with Ayane. And then right after that, we broke up, and there was kind of a hiatus before I ended up recording 4 songs actually at once. And King of Hamilton was one of those. So yeah, the next song, which didn't come until closer till near the end of the album, but it was kind of like a reflective song that I put kind of right after Cool Vibrations to show like everything must happen for a reason, like destiny, fate, right? So that's why it's called Destiny. And the idea was there was also Gundam Seed Destiny, so it was a reference to that. And that's why I was like, I got to get a Japanese singer on this song, right? Just to kind of capture that vibe. And I didn't know what she was going to sing. Me and Reiko are really good friends. We've made a lot of songs together. That was actually our first time making a song together. She had been going through some struggles with her mother's health, so she didn't respond right away. I didn't actually know I was going to make the song with her until it just kind of happened. It unfolded near the end of the album, and it was like, oh, well, I got to get you on the song. Like, I understand you were going through stuff. I was going through stuff too, so we could relate. And then what she sings was very beautiful, and it captured like just the general vibe of what I kind of wanted the chorus to sound like. And I didn't know it was going to sound like that, but the words and the emotions she captured, excuse me, the Japanese pop vibe too was very prevalent with that. Now, with Cool Vibrations, that instrumental was actually composed and produced by Daybreak himself, the guy who mixed and mastered the album. Destiny, on the other hand, was another one of my instrumentals. So I was very proud that I made such a great, cool beat, and that was my own vibe, my own style, right? The lyrics were a reflection of all the women I've been with, and kind of looking back as, you know what, okay, things with those women didn't work out so well, but that's okay because they had their flaws. And I was kind of looking back on it, it all happens for a good reason. That's how I was trying to justify it. It's all part of destiny. Those women I was with weren't exactly the best. They had these flaws, but as I progressed, they got better and better. So I tried to like lean on the hope that better was yet to come. And this was right before I met my second girlfriend, long time, Haruna, who did the intro and the outro. And I did reflect on dating my first two long-term relationships, Bria and Rahima, which were 4 years on and off and 3 years. And then with the second verse, I'm kind of talking about like all the flings in between, and then also reminiscing on this one girl I liked who kind of played me at the time. It wasn't really a serious relationship. Nothing happened between us. All the other flings, sort of sexual encounters, we'll call them. And then Ayane, who I had actually considered the best and closest girlfriend to what I wanted at the time. So that's what that song was overall about. And it was very deep and personal to write that song. I had somebody tell me that they thought the lyrics didn't make a lot of sense before. It was this guy who claimed to be like a radio announcer and some professional manager, and he said that I was just throwing rhymes into the mix, but it was meant to be abstract in some cases, yes. However, if you really understand the metaphors of what I'm saying and in those lyrics, I'm telling a story. That's why you actually hear so many names rhymed in that song. Like so many things in that song rhymed with themselves because it was the idea of synchronicity, that everything tied together, that you would hear these kind of random references that didn't really have to do with the overall theme, but it was sort of the analogy or the metaphor of why you could interpret it or view it that way. So that's what I feel like that producer didn't get. And he kind of knocked it, but I feel like, you know what, it was just too far above his head for him to understand the actual genius and complexity of Destiny. I still to this day consider it one of my truest songs. And especially if you watched my live Clo card fortune telling reading videos, well, you obviously know then that I love Hitomi Shimatani. And that was the first time I admitted that, because I had gone through the rough patch after losing my girlfriend at the time. I was very depressed. I almost died. And she had saved my life. So I kind of looked at her like an angel. And she was like the more pure woman of what I wanted in my dream ideal partner, right? And I kind of looked at her as hope that, the perfect woman was still out there. And That's why in the song, it was actually the first time I admitted it. And I look back, I'm like, that was the truest line I ever said in any song, because I still feel the same way even 3 years later. But to quote the line in Destiny, Aishteru hitomi shimatani watashi no tenshi. I love you, hitomi shimatani, my angel. That's what it means in English. So that was very deep. And especially with this album, because I've been studying Japanese, I developed a real fascination with the culture. I was really trying to sort of bridge that vibe and energy of Japanese pop, because I love the upbeat hype energy of it, the vibration of it, and try and mix that into hip hop, because it was kind of something undone. Nobody'd ever dared to attempt it. And I really liked the idea of a North American artist taking influence from other music that had never been mixed into hip hop and giving it a new vibe. I mean, I was a big fan of a Canadian rapper named Buck 65, and his contribution to hip hop in itself was mixing like country music, which had never been done in hip hop ever before, into hip hop, and creating something that completely sounded like no other type of rap in history. So I took a lot of influence from Buck 65 as a fellow Canadian rapper to really step out and try something different. Give the hip hop my sort of point of view, my perspective. I love Japanese music a lot. That's why I've always been experimenting and incorporating more of that into my music. Hence the new song coming out, which I will do a music video for, Boku mo Aishteru yo. My first song, all in Japanese, and it's like a Japanese punk rock pop sound, Japanese pop. And it's very cool because, like, with that kind of music too, I was really inspired heavily, especially with this album. Like, a lot of animes were big inspirations with this record. Making Trapness cheese when Princess Reiko defended me. Trapness was a band in the anime Nana, which inspired a lot of ideas. I actually wanted to do a song that sounded a lot more like Anna Tsuchiya, but the producer ended up losing the beat who made it for me at the time and refused to contact me. So I never ended up making that one song I had an idea for called Selfless Love. It never saw the light of day. But one of the beats he did make, he was a producer named Lone Wolf. We'll talk about that later on in the album discussion, because that beat did make it onto Impulse. Now, the next track, as I said, Destiny came a lot closer to near the end of the record, but the next track was Midnight Assassin. And the instrumental for that came from the idea of a video game I used to love to play as a kid on PS2 called Dark Cloud. There was a boss you fight in the game where he was this giant minotaur with like a battle axe, and you're fighting in like a competition, and it had like a beat that was very similar and upbeat. And I was like, I want something like that. So I gave that to Daybreak, the guy who mixed and mastered the album. And I was like, make me something like that. And the reason I decided to call it Midnight Assassin, like, I came up with the chorus and I kind of threw all the ideas together, like being super lyrical, just annihilating like the competition. But that all came from the idea of Alucard as well, because there was a Yasushi Ishii produced instrumentation that was used in the original Hellsing soundtrack he called Midnight Assassin. And I had actually rapped some of the lyrical ideas in that on Impulse, and in this too, on a different version of the song. It's released on my Facebook somewhere, but it was for another person I liked at the time, but I didn't want to like get copyright sued, so that's why I didn't end up professionally releasing it. But the idea, I liked that idea of Midnight Assassin, right? So as I was like coming up with like a rough chorus to tie like the whole song together, I decided, you know what, that's going to be a sick song, because like Mayonaka no Sashin, fresh as Mr. Clean, the Midnight Assassin always gets that cream, right? So it kind of came together very naturally, mixing like the Japanese with the English. And the cool thing is, originally, when I was beginning to make this song, like I had the ideas, it was actually supposed to be a song called Duel of the Wise. And it was planned that perhaps a rapper like Jizza from Wu-Tang Clan would have been on it. He wanted $10,000. I didn't have $10,000, so that's why he didn't appear on it, just for the record. And then Cannabis wanted $1,000 to be on it. Didn't have $1,000 either. In fact, I've spoken with Cannabis a few times. He always wants $1,000. I don't have 1,000 to just give him. Otherwise, I would have put him on a song, because I actually do think he's very lyrical. And in my opinion, he's one of the most underrated rappers all time. Jizza is one of my favorites because I love the idea that he mixed ideas from the Lone Wolf and Cub samurai movies with Tomisaburo Wakayama. Shogun Assassin is the English dub version of it. He used that in his album Liquid Swords. So I really always have been a huge Jizza fan. In fact, I would say he's probably my favorite member of the clan. That's why I've always wanted to make a song with him as well. Just couldn't afford it. But just interesting fact for the audience listening, in case they didn't know, Jizza almost was on it, and also so was Cannabis. Just interesting fact about that. But either way, I'm very proud of how Midnight Assassin turned out, and it had a very funky, on-edge, upbeat style. And that was also the day I recorded that song, was also the last day I spent with Ayane, my ex, and she did the song Impulse with me, which we will get to later on in the track listing. Now, the next song I did, which was actually the same day I did Destiny with Reiko, and also the same day I did the song Genai with Olga Chung, Chinese singer. She's been on a lot of songs. But I did the next song, Sorumeto, which means soulmate in Japanese. I did that with this singer named Yukie Dong. And I believe she's Chinese-Japanese mixed. And she actually had a friend help her come up with the chorus and the bridge lyrics for this. But we had this beat, and it was a hip-hop beat, but it had a very like Far East, Chinese, Japanese vibe to it, like a mix of the two. And it had a lot of the instrumentation over there to this like really intense hip hop beat. And especially because I had gone through the breakup at that point, I had a lot of emotion and sort of pain to spew out into this song. Like that, okay, I went through these losses, but it was because I'm yet to find my soulmate. And that's how I justified like rapping the verses on this. Yukie did a very good job with this song. I have no ill will towards her. We just ended up having disputes when it came to making a documentary about the making of this album. She didn't want to be a part of it. We kind of bumped heads. Egos collide sometimes in the music industry. It happens. And then she ended up being kind of very difficult to work with. In fact, I actually reached out to her to try and apologize and suggest, someday we should make another song together. And no response. So I guess that bridge is burned. And, well, if she ever was to watch this, I would say, you know what? I'm sorry for any disputes or difficulties we had together. I think we did really great on Sorumeto together. And if ever we made another song together, I'm sure it'd be great too. So keep up the good work. Nothing but love. All is forgiven. So yeah, that was Sorumeto, and that beat came from a completely different producer called Dotanuki. And he was a Japanese producer who he was working on this beat, and he didn't really have much experience as a producer, but he was really proud of this beat. And I met him on Facebook and we were talking, and he was like, I don't really have experience in this. I've never been on a professionally produced album or nothing, but this beat is really good. I think you'd like it. Like, all I want is just like a bit of credit, because then in the future, if I wanted, I could say, oh, well, my work was featured on Super Kamiguru Alucard's album, like on the song Sorumeto. And I was like, yeah, of course. And I really liked the beat too. I love the vibe of it, right? That's why I got Yukie to do the chorus and everything, because I was really feeling the idea of it. And the way she captured the idea of the song being like a love letter was very, very beautiful too. I love that. It actually reminded me of because I told her about a song by Hitomi, oddly enough. Hitomi was a huge influence on this record. I can't lie, because that came after the breakup. That came when I had almost died, and he told me saved my life. So all her songs were very big, inspiring concepts for this record. And that, oddly enough, she has a song called Love Letter, and I sent that to Yukie saying, come up with something like that. And sure enough, she did. And it was kind of funny that it worked out like that, because she actually references the idea of a love letter, which is a very beautiful concept in Japanese culture as well. So that was Sorumeito. And then the next song was Kuroi Namida, which means black tears, in brackets, end of negativity. And this song was inspired, it had a real Anna Tsuchiya vibe, because that's where the title Black Tears comes from. I wanted to make a song like her song, Black Tears, Kuroi Namida, but I couldn't get a beat that really captured the way she sang Kuroi Namida. So I ended up just taking what I had written as an idea, referencing her lyrics, and I did it as an outro. Like, I just kind of said it at the end. But the verses were about like how I loved Ayane, how I missed her, how I was sad that things ended the way I did. And the actual chorus of the song, which I did end up making this beat myself, Kuroi Namida was my production. Very proud of it. It had like the flute to it, and just kind of this really nice epic vibe, like these darker kind of new wave Japanese 80s pop vibes too, with synthesizers and stuff. The beat, the bass, everything was good about it. But the chorus was inspired from the first opening theme song of the anime Hell Girl. And I really loved the chorus of that song. Like, I just love that song. And like, I changed it slightly to make it fit more of my idea of the song, but it is referencing that to in a great extent, because I really love that song. And then yeah, at the end of the song, when I'm doing the outro, which is a reference to like Anna Tsuchiya, it's kind of like I'm apologizing to Ayane if I did anything wrong. I'm sorry I hurt you. I wish we didn't break up. I really did love you, but just trying to make peace and move on. So that was the idea behind that song. And then the next song, which, like I said, this was actually, I recorded that one the same day that I did King of Hamilton. And I also did the other two songs we'll discuss later on. They Call Me 12 Gauge and Waku Waku Afternoon on that day. Waku Waku Afternoon was my attempt to make a nice Japanese pop sort of vibe, inspired by baby metal too, to kind of win Ayane back. It didn't work out, but that's where that idea. And then They Call Me 12 Gauge also came from the idea of going back to my roots, my origin, right? But the next song after Kuroi Namida, which was the same production as After Dark and two other songs we'll discuss later, Tone Jones, who did all the instrumentation for my second album, Nail Gun. But yeah, he did the beat for Dance at Dusk, and I really liked it. The beat was originally called something like Carlito's Way, and Carlito's Way with Al Pacino was one of my favorite movies, which inspired me to like check out the beat and listen to it. And the vibraphone, the upbeat style of it, I really liked it. Like, it was just very funky, but it had this vibe of like almost like dusk, twilight, after dark. Like, it reminded me of From Dusk Till Dawn. So that's why I came up with the idea of Dance at Dusk. And originally I had an idea for a beat with this song, oddly enough, that was way different, with that producer I lost contact with, Lone Wolf, who did he did Genai with Olga Chung. That was the only track that actually made it on the record. But he came up with a completely different beat of this originally, inspired by a song by a Japanese pop singer, Maya Mane, called Tesogare. And that was actually how the beat to that was going to sound. Now, after I lost the beat, I wanted something with a vibraphone in it, like a. So when I heard this on the beat from Tone Jones, I was like, okay, this is a good enough replacement. And then because I had already done the other song with the Japanese American singer Natasha Remy, I thought, oh, I should put her on this too because she could sing it in English, but it will have like a really nice vibe. And that's why the bridge actually has Spanish in it, because that's a reference to From Dusk Till Dawn as well. It's a reference to the Tito and Tarantula song, Cucarachas Enojadas, I believe is how you say it. Angry Cockroaches in English, though. But yeah, it's like I really like that song, and I kind of took ideas from that for the bridge. But the lyrics for the chorus were the idea of not wanting to sell out, to make my own original music, to make it beautiful, passionate, but be true to myself as an artist. And Natasha did a very great job of singing that. Oddly enough, we had fallouts for similar reasons as UPA when I wanted to do the documentary for the album. And we lost contact after that, too. But if she was watching too, I'd say great job. Sorry we had the fallout, and who knows, maybe one day we'll make another song again. I actually had wanted her to do another song, which she said she couldn't come up with lyrics for, and I ended up doing that song solo, a song later on the record called Aishteru. Actually, that's the next song we'll talk about too, oddly enough, now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, like Dance at Dusk was a really cool song because there's inspiration from like anime like Vampire Night and Card Captor Sakura and um horror films and stuff like that from Dusk Till Dawn. So there's a lot of deep rooted symbolism in Dance at Dusk, and I'm very proud of how that song turned out. Like I said, that was actually the fourth song I had recorded for the album. That was right after Cool Vibrations, and it turned out really good. And then I also did the next song. I did that the same day I did it, one of the final songs on the record, the Nagashi, Aishteru, and the Nagashi I did on the same day. Both produced by me because Dance at Dusk was Tone Jones. But yeah, I did Aishteru, and because Natasha couldn't come up with anything, I wrote my own lyrics in Japanese, and I was very proud of that too, because I was like, you know what, I'm really good at writing lyrics in Japanese, and I was proud of that. And Japanese people that I've talked to who have listened to the song and say it's very good, they all could tell that Hitomi Shimatani, which is why I have her autographed record, as you could see here, she was a very big influence and inspiration to this song too. Like a lot of the album, but this song really was almost like a song praising my love to her. And there was many references to her songs throughout the album. I even quoted ideas from her songs throughout this song because I really loved it. Now, when the mixing and mastering engineer Daybreak first heard this, he said, it sounds like instrumental music you would hear if you were driving out the desert in a dune buggy or something. And that's what he said. And it was funny because the picture that came to mind when he said that was the part of the Lone Wolf and Cub movies where he's battling the Masters of Death out in the desert in the sand dunes. And there was kind of the vibe of that, which inspired it. Oddly enough, that's what's funny he said that. It had a very deserty, tropical vibe, like sort of wandering through the desert trying to find your oasis. And I looked at Hitomi as sort of being like an oasis, right? Something I could dwell in the positive energy of and feel good about. So Aishteru was a very special song. I'm very proud of that song still to this day because I did the entire chorus in Japanese except for one part, which is Te Eubesc. That's Romanian for I love you. And similar to what the lines were all in Japanese about. But yeah, those verses were very deep. They were also talking about this other girl that kind of ghosted me and led me on, who was a Japanese singer over there I had talked about forming a duo with at one point too, named Yukiko Sawada. She was in this movie, famous Japanese movie called Depression. Definitely check it out. It's interesting. But yeah, like there were a lot of mixed feelings throughout that one. Like the idea of trying to find love with the Japanese woman was a very big concept with this record of Impulse, right? It was part of the journey. It was the journey to find that love, but also the musical journey of expressing it musically while finding it. So that's why I say, still to this day, I found that this was my most deep, very true to myself sort of album and my character. So the next song after Aishteru, which would take us to track 11, is the song um, Impulse, which is the song I did with my ex Ayane. And what I can say about that is that song actually had a lot of really cool, inspiring factors about it. Now, the verses came, the second verse especially came from that rough idea of the song I told you I did for a girl, oddly enough, named Hitomi, with that Yasushi Ishii instrumental for Midnight Assassin, different than the one on this album. But the second verse came from that. The idea of mixing like Japanese terms into the verse, that came for the second verse. The first one was kind of a more rapid, like intense sort of impulse vibe, like, and the chorus that Ayane sang, like I got her to sing on it. That is based on a Tatsuro Yamashita song, because I was a big fan of Tatsuro Yamashita. I have his album Right on Time. Actually, the very same album this song comes from. His first track on the album, Itsuka, or Someday, is what inspired it. Now, the album's version of the song, the chorus, were slightly changed, so it said Impulse instead of Someday twice. So the lyrics were kind of changed with the rhythm to fit the rhythm of the beat, but Someday Hitori Janaku Nari Impulse Nanika Kami Tsukaru. So instead of like the impulse part, it would just be someday again. So, but those were Tatsuro's words, actually inspired by Tatsuro, which is why I gave him writing credit when I did distribute it and professionally release it, because he did inspire most of the words for that chorus. The instrumental itself, which was produced by the mixing and mastering engineer who did the album, Daybreak, that was his third instrumental and contribution to the record. I gave him the idea of that from the anime Cardcaptor Sakura, which there's a lot of references to that throughout the album. But the beat came from the first ending theme song of the original show, Groovy Love Song, Hallelujah. And I really love that song. Like, I love the upbeatness to that. So I was like, okay, come on, Daybreak, make me something like that, like a vibe like that. And he did. He changed the instrumentation, so it didn't quite sound exactly like the Cardcaptor Sakura one, but the melody was the same. It was a really good reflection of how the melody sounded. And I really liked that he got that. And then the way he's playing the flutes for the second verse, kind of giving it a more mellow, smooth vibe, really captures that vibe of Japanese music. And I love that about that song. And then the outro is Ayane doing wee, and that was a reference to a thing that Sakura said all the time, because she used to love to impersonate that when we would watch the Clear Card show together, right? So I was like, I gotta get her doing that. Todemo kawaii, very cute, right? So, and then what I say in Japanese is a reference to a song from Gundam Seed. One of the songs called Wings of Words, it had a line that I thought was so beautiful, that even pessimists can change when they fall in love, right? So that's what I said in the end of the song in Japanese, because I really thought that was just so poetic, because I was a pretty negative and pessimistic person, especially before I started making the album and before Ayane, and even sometimes after. So I could really relate to that, that love could really change even somebody who's normally negative, like their attitude. And it was a beautiful idea to me, and I really love that. So that's what inspired Impulse. And that was actually recorded the day right before Ayane went back to Japan. And that was the last time I ever saw her. At least, you know, the happy memory is we got to make that beautiful song together. And then They Call Me, the next song, which I recorded the same day as Kuroi Namida and King of Hamilton, They Call Me 12 Gauge in brackets. Now, that instrumental was all me as well, and I was very proud of making that one because it had a very nostalgic, like, looking back kind of vibe. And I was like, wow, to look at back of the day when I was just freestyling and rapping for smokes and tokes in the smokers pit at my high school cathedral, like as 12 gauge to super comic guru Alucard now. I really evolved and come a long way. Now, the Super Kami Guru didn't actually come until right at the end of the record, oddly enough. I had just finished the album and I kind of evolved so much emotionally, like the growth from Alucard at the beginning of the record to the end of the record. I was like, I've grown so much. I'm not even Alucard anymore. And then I was watching the abridged version of Dragon Ball Z on YouTube, and the Grand Elder Guru, he was making a joke. He's like, oh, well, if Kami on Earth is Kami, which is Japanese for God, then he's like, I'm Super Kami Guru. And I was like, you know what? Shit, man. I've evolved so much. I'm no longer just Alucard. I'm like, I'm Super Kami Guru Alucard. And actually, I wanted to have it just as a short acronym. When I released it, I wanted my stage name to be SKGA. TuneCore wouldn't allow me to use an acronym for some reason. So I had to just fully lay it out because I'm like, I'm not changing that. That's the embodiment of the character right there. Fully in entirety, it says everything. Super Kami Guru Alucard is really the whole statement that summarizes me as an artist. So I didn't want to compromise that idea, right? So that's why it was Super Kami Guru Alucard. But originally, yeah, it was 12 gauge. That was a name that everybody called me in high school. Even my teachers, when they would take attendance, they'd be like, oh, yeah, 12 gauge is here. I was just known by that. So to reflect, just so like any fans who knew me back in the day from high school could sit there and say, oh, shit, that's 12 gauge. Wow, he's Super Kami Guru Alucard now. He's evolved. He's grown as an artist. He's changed, right? And I mean, it's funny because back when I was making this album, and even quite a few albums after that, until I'd say the start of this year recently, I've been smoking marijuana. I was very dependent upon it, but I'm glad I gave that up. I'm still working on quitting smoking tobacco and cigarettes. It's a challenge, it's a battle, but I'm getting better at it. I'm keep working at it. Even when it comes to drinking, I only drink Japanese alcohol now to kind of limit myself, put a barrier on it. So I'm, constantly trying to improve myself, work towards bigger and better things. But yeah, They Call Me was a very intense song because it had a lot of ideas that I had for verses that I had written back when I was dating Rahima still, even before I moved to the new apartment. And this was actually a song that I thought could really tell my story to the world. So I worked very intensely on making the verses for this song to make them all embody the same sound because I was fascinated by the idea of this concept, especially with this song. It's evident too. And even After Dark, I do the same thing for both verses. But on this song, the idea was rappers always say, oh, I'm going to spit a rhyme, but then they spit multiple rhymes because they're not keeping the same rhyme going to the end of their verse. They're changing it up. They're throwing different rhymes into the mix. So really, when they say that, they should actually be saying, I'm spitting rhymes, like I'm firing multiple rhymes off. But I was like, what if you only used one rhyme, like one rhyme sound the whole time? Like you would basically be like using the rhyme in every single possible way, but keeping the sound consistent. And I was fascinated by the idea of that because I grew up listening to a lot of older school rappers. I love the lyrical styles when they would just really hammer as many lyrics with the same sound as they could into a verse. And my favorite especially was Big Pun. So I'd always strive to like be as good as Pun, but then to master rapping at his speed and delivery, but raise the bar. So he would use multiple different sounds of rhymes throughout his verses, but I was like, okay, what if I just use that one sound at Pun speed and intensity? Then I would raise the bar, set a new standard. So that's what I strive to do, especially with They Call Me 12 Gauge. It's like the rhymes go everywhere, like when a 12 gauge shotgun blast, it kind of goes in every direction. So that was the idea behind that. The next song was Always by My Side, which was also produced by Tone Jones, the same guy who did After Dark and Dance at Dusk, and Natasha Remy, the Japanese American singer who did Dance at Dusk, did this song as well. Now, this song was very heavily influenced by baby metal ideas because I was a big fan of baby metal. I actually got their autographs, the three original girls. I'll show you there. Very cool. Very proud of that. Sort of a keepsake because they're no longer together either. But yeah, with that song, it was very cool because I wrote the lyrics, all the lyrics, even the Japanese lyrics that Natasha sang. In fact, I got her opinion on that because I was like, oh, well, she's a Japanese American lady, but she could tell me if I wrote that right. Because those were the first lyrics I ever wrote in Japanese, right? So I was like, okay, I want somebody's opinion. Like, did I write those good? And she said, normal speaking wise, it wouldn't exactly be a normal statement, but in songs, it's kind of more sensible to sing it like that so that you could keep like the rhythm or the sound of the melody the same. So she said, actually, that's very well written in a poetic sense. It's very beautiful. So she sang the lyrics in Japanese, and then the bridge is her singing again, but it's a mix of Japanese and English lyrics, which was inspired by baby metal. And the verses were inspired by the idea of finding my true love, the Japanese woman of my dreams. And it was a very beautiful song. In fact, when I was showing people to it, when I was still just Alucard, showing it around to some of my friends at the time, they'd all tell me, they'd be like, wow, that's a beautiful song. Like, I guarantee if you got that on the radio, you would really turn some heads. Sadly, I don't think I've ever gotten radio play. And it's even more sad with that song. There's no swearing in it. So it could definitely get put on the radio. I'm just waiting for a radio station who would actually let me put it on the radio. And I would love to crank Always by My Side because I honestly could say, too, because of the beautiful nature of the melody that Tone Jones did, Natasha singing, my rapping, that I could say was one of the most beautiful songs I ever made. And it was also the very second song I ever recorded for Impulse. Like, it was the same day as After Dark. It was the first two songs for the record. So yeah, it was a very beautiful song. I'm very proud of that still to this day. And that's what the song was about. It was about finding like that true love from a Japanese woman that was compatible with me, that would always be by my side, right? Very beautiful, romantic, sort of poetic song. And I'm very proud of that song still to this day. Even when I showed that song to Ayane, I actually believe that that's part of what helped her fall in love with me, which is kind of a beautiful idea when I think about it like that. So that was track number 13. The next one was Waku Waku Afternoon, which is also inspired by baby metal, and that was the same day I did They Call Me 12 Gauge, Kuroi Namida, End of Negativity, and King of Hamilton. I did 4 songs in that day. This song, Waku Waku Afternoon, it started out as a joke. That's what's funny, and it's now my highest viewed song of all. It has almost 1,500 views. It might even have 1,500 now. It's close to it though. I know it's over 1,400. It's almost to 1,500. So my most highest viewed song. I was very proud of that because it was the first time I actually rapped in Japanese. Like, the song is about 50-50, half Japanese, half English, because the first verse is mostly Japanese with a few English words in between to tie it together. And the second verse is mostly English with a few Japanese words to tie it together. And then the chorus is 50-50, 50-50. But the idea of that came from a baby metal song. It actually came from 2 baby metal songs, because when I was learning Japanese, I was loving the ideas of the songs baby metal did, Doki Doki Morning and Uki Uki Midnight. And I wondered to myself, I'm like, why are they saying it twice? And then I found out, like, Doki is time, so double time. And then Uki is like high, high, like you're floating almost, right? And then my ex Ayane explained to me that Waku Waku could be used in a similar concept. Like, it's exciting, but Waku Waku would be very exciting. So I was like, well, there's a Doki Doki Morning. There's an Uki Uki Midnight. There's nothing for the afternoon. I was like, there should be a Waku Waku Afternoon. I'm like, baby metal should do it. And they didn't. They ended up breaking up shortly after that. And I was like, This should be a Waku Waku afternoon. I'm like, you know what? I should do it. And at first, I was saying that as a joke. I wasn't really serious. I was like, yeah, I'm making Waku Waku afternoon. And then one day, I just started making this beat. And I was like, and I was like, hey, this sounds like this could be that Waku Waku afternoon, which I could honestly say this was one of my favorite beats I actually made myself and produced. So that's how Waku Waku afternoon kind of came about. And that's why there's the reference to baby metal in the song too. With baby metal music, I could go anywhere. Yeah, konnichiwa, Aishteru, Waku Waku afternoon. And yeah, I was just really proud of that. And like I said earlier too, it was kind of a song I made hoping that if Ayane heard it, you know, she might come back to me. Sadly, it didn't end up happening that way. She ended up with some guy in America having a baby and won't even talk to me now. Broke my heart. But well, I have Hitomi to love. So it all worked out for the best. That's why I mentioned too many times in this video that Hitomi really helped me through a lot of the hardships and the struggles of making this album. When I wanted to die, when I was about ready to give up and I kept pushing forward, it was Hitomi that really saved my life and kept me going when all hope seemed lost. And I'm eternally grateful to her forever for that. Arigatou gozaimasu. Shimatani Hitomi-chan. Itsumo. So, yeah. With that song, it was really really stepping into the Japanese pop world with the hip hop, right? And I'm really proud of it like that. And then the next song, which was the only beat to see the light of day from this producer, Lone Wolf, because like I said, he did 2 other beats that I know of too. He did a beat for Dance at Dusk, which never saw the light of day. I lost it when my computer crashed. Using Maya Mane's Tasogure, which is Twilight or Dusk in English translation. And then he also did a beat using Zero by Anna Suchiya for an idea of a song I had called Selfless Love, which I also lost on. Oh man, I wish I could have heard back from him that he could have done this beat for me again, because it was one of my favorite beats that I never got to use. And still to this day, I wish somebody else could make it for me, because I love the like the vibe of that song, right? But this song was one that he made that I did keep in my emails and I was actually able to use for the album. Now, originally, oddly enough, this was the beat intended for an idea of a song about ending negativity, the end of negativity. And the singer I had contact with, who never actually got back to me about doing this, was a Canadian Filipina singer named Elise Estrada, and it never ended up coming to the light of day, but she almost ended up singing on this song, like this instrumental for a song about the end of negativity. That didn't work out, so I ended up making the other beat, and that became Kuroi Namida, End of Negativity. This beat, because I had it sitting there and I didn't really know what to do with the song. And it was funny because I had reached out trying to find some Japanese pop singers to mix into the album, especially because Natasha seemed sort of burnt out and couldn't really come up with anything. So I was like, I got to get some other singers on board this to really capture like the Oriental, Japanese pop, Chinese sort of vibes, right? And K-pop was also kind of a bit of an influence at the time. And there was stuff by Twice I really liked I was listening to. So that's why you get this mix of like singers from over there in Asia and the vibe. But I reached out to UPA, and she was the one I was aiming for because I wanted her to sing on Sorumeito. Now, I also reached out to Olga because Olga was a Chinese singer. She could play guitar, and she had a very beautiful voice, and she could sing in both dialects of Chinese, Cantonese, and Mandarin. And she lives in Hong Kong, so she also knew English. But I wanted to do something that was kind of like a Chinese vibe song because I really love the idea of one of my favorite video games is called Suikoden, and there's the idea of 108 Stars of Destiny, which is based on a Chinese legend from a very famous Chinese book I have actually right here called The Water Margin, which is one of only 4 books to to survive the Dragon King's massive book burning in China because he didn't want his enemies to be smarter. So he burned all these books. But I love the idea of 108 stars gathering together in the process of like trying to find true love. And that's where like it was one idea after another because she responded after Yukie had got the song for Sorumeto and Reiko hadn't responded yet. That's why I ended up using her on Destiny later on because I was like, oh, I should get her to work on this one. But this song was sitting here and I didn't really know what to do with it. And you could honestly say that Olga's energy and just talking to Olga and seeing she was very nice, she was a very great artist and kind of had this very positive aura and energy about her. It just kind of started to give me ideas like, oh, we should do a song like this, like a song, You and Me Together. I have this beat. I was thinking, like, I don't really know what to do for it. I want the song to be about, like, true love, like 108 Stars of Destiny and Genai, we'll call it, or whatever. And then I would rap about it in English. I'll slightly reference, like, some ideas in Japanese and Chinese, and then you could sing, like, the chorus and the bridge, right? So we did it. And oddly enough, what's cool about this song, and this is the only song that this really happened. Now, she recorded her parts before I did mine. And it gave me enough space that she would do the chorus after I did the intro. And then I could do a verse. But then because she did the chorus and the bridge, as the beat's kind of like fading out and getting to the end, the only way I could fit that second verse in there was to rap it right to the end. But I thought, you know what? That could work because it doesn't fade out. It just kind of stops abruptly right at the end of like that final like section of the beat, right? So I was like, oh, I could still fit that second verse there. And then we'll just stop it right after the last like rhyme, right? So that was not intended. I was actually thinking it would have went intro, chorus, verse, bridge, verse, chorus. But she ended up doing, and I'll put it this way. I didn't tell her to do this, but I'm not mad that she did it. It was actually cool that she did that because I guess that's how she was viewing a different kind of vibe for it because that was not intended. I actually thought it would have been sorry, there was a unstable connection, maybe something going on with the internet, but hopefully it didn't cut me out too much. But what I was trying to say before that notification popped up, the connection was unstable because we are almost done. We're going to wrap it up soon, but we'll just get through the rest of the songs. With this song that was really cool was because she did the chorus and the bridge, it left me only the ending of the beat. And I was kind of like, well, I have this other verse. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to wrap it right to the end. And that's what's kind of cool is because right after the last like part of my rhyming, it ends right like that, like the end. And I was kind of like, that's a whole different vibe. So I kind of like that she did that. It was not planned or intended, but by doing things her own way, it kind of forced me to improvise and be more creative. And it turned out really good. That is honestly a very beautiful song. And I get a lot of praise about it, especially because it's the only song where I've really mixed like that much of a Chinese vibe into it. Right. But very cool. And then the next song on the album, because we've only got 3 more tracks to cover now. The next one was the last one produced by me other than the outro, which was mixed and mastered by me as well. But this one, I did the instrumentation, and I also jammed out with a friend's guitar to actually do the guitar solo at the end of it myself. And I was trying to play like Ren from Nana, because I really liked his character and he had that punk rock vibe. So I was trying to play like his guitar solo, like his character's guitar solo on the song they do for the Nana soundtrack, Starless Night. So that was the inspiration behind that. And then the idea of the title, the Nagashi, it's like the Japanese version of El Mariachi, like a traveling musician who wanders around with a guitar in hands in search of love. Because I had this picture where I was holding a guitar, I had my Alucard shades on, and I was wearing a fedora. And people were like, oh, you kind of look like El Mariachi or a Nagashi, or you kind of have that Stevie Ray Vaughan vibe. So that's why I ended up playing that guitar solo. But it had that vibe of, I was like, yeah, you know what? I like guitar or not. I don't play guitar that much. I'm more into the tenor sax, which I'm sure you could tell from a lot of my other music videos and songs. But the vibe of being that traveling musician in search of love, going through the heartaches, the trials, but trying to find that true love while making music. That really was an embodiment of the character that I could relate to. So I was like, yeah, the Nagashi, right? So I came up with that chorus, mostly in Japanese, and even the producer was like, this is a pretty like funky, wild song you got going there. And then I jam out with that guitar solo to the end, it fades out. And then that led to the final song, final actual song on the record. It's an adventure, which is right when I had met Haruna, my second Japanese girlfriend. She was an older woman. She was married at the time, but we had a good relationship. I'm grateful for all the love we shared together and all the time we spent together, even if it didn't end ideally. But I made her that song because I loved her, and I wrote the verses. I didn't know what the singer was going to sing on it because I thought, oh, well, K-pop's pretty popular too. We got a Chinese singer, we got Japanese singers. We need to get a Korean pop singer. And this was the last song I did record for the album. So I got this Korean pop singer and rapper. Her name's Ashley, but she goes by Gats on the record. She also appears on my song with Reiko, All I Want, in retrospect, rapping. But yeah, she wrote the lyrics herself. I kind of gave her the vibe of how the beat would sound. And then I wrote my lyrics, mostly rapping in Japanese, but rapping about Haruna. And she really liked that. And it was a very sweet kind of idea for a song. And then I liked the idea of Gat's chorus, but it didn't say what the title of it was. And this was inspired by a song from the anime The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, the opening first theme song, Bokuen Desho, Desho. It's an adventure, right? Right? So I was like, oh, well, I gotta like incorporate that it's an adventure, like trying to find love, trying to make music. It's all an adventure, right? So as she's singing it, because there's that break, and when she sings, I was like, oh, that's where I'll do it. I'll make it like a Still Not a Player kind of vibe, like what Big Pun did with Joe on Still Not a Player, right? So I was like, it's an adventure. And that's kind of how that all came about. It was kind of like I came up with the verses, she did her parts. I thought, I should add, it's an adventure. And then, yeah, it all just kind of tied in together wonderfully. And Haruna said that that was a very beautiful song, that even her daughter used to love to sing it all the time. And they even asked me for the lyrics, especially because I rapped the second verse in Japanese, and they really liked that. And it was one of those beautiful sort of happy memories of the song. Now, Haruna was actually originally intended to do the intro in the song, but she had to go to Japan the day before I ended up recording it. She went back to Japan, and we were supposed to record the day before she left, but the producer didn't get back to us on time and couldn't put her on it. So that's why I ended up just getting her to record while she was back in Japan, the intro and the outro, which is the next track after this, track 18. And that rounded off because I mixed and mastered those myself. Daybreak did the other 16 mixed and mastered tracks. And then It's an Adventure, the last song I was actually just talking about, that was the fourth of Tone Jones's beats, because he did After Dark, he did Dance at Dusk, Always by My Side, and It's an Adventure. So yeah, and overall, I'm very proud with that record. Like, I actually believe someday people will look back on that as one of my most beautiful, original, raw, and pure albums of really the embodiment of who I am as an artist. In fact, I'm always trying to experiment and create new ideas, new vibes, new sounds. But I'm very proud, even if that album didn't sell millions of copies, which, buy it, people. It should have sold millions already. And I believe someday it will sell millions, because it's a better hip hop album than any of these rappers nowadays. They all sound like they're drunk and they're slurring their speech in the studio, and they hardly rhyme. It's like, compared to them, I'm way ahead of the game. Eventually, it's got to sell millions. And it hasn't sold millions yet. Well, maybe it has on some level of the spiritual realm. I just have yet to see it manifested. But check out Impulse. The links are below, because we are concluding this video now. Please buy, support, like, stream, share, do whatever you can to help, keep the Super Kami Guru Alucard journey going. And we will be back tomorrow to discuss Nail Gun, my second album, and we will do this over the next couple days just so that the audience can, really get a vibe of what it was like to make these albums. Because as I said, like, we are going to wrap up soon, but I would summarize basically what the experience was making the album at the end of it. So from making After Dark, the very first track, and Always by My Side, the second track, all the way to right in the end when I did Destiny with Reiko, Genai, Sorumeto, and It's an Adventure. It was an emotional roller coaster. And with that album, you really could hear that. It goes up and down. There's some like really beautiful, romantic, high upbeat moments. There's some really dark, like struggling kind of times. Like, it's very much like a roller coaster. But that's what I find makes this album so beautiful, is it sort of has every color painted in it. Like if it was like a beautiful painting of a rainbow, it's got the dark shades, it's got the light shades. In that sense, I am very proud of this album because I find it was one of my most emotionally deep albums, and probably the time when I was inspired to just be myself the most. And especially with all the emotions I was going through, the good, the bad, the ups and the downs, making the album, I can honestly tell you that album is probably what I will always look back on as probably the most crazy emotional time of my life. But that's why I mentioned too, I have to really give thanks to Hitomi Shimatani, because if she didn't save me and inspire me with her music to keep going, I might have died and never even completed the album. So I'm forever grateful to her. And if she ever watches this one day, Aishteru zuto. Arigatou gozaimasu. And hope you all enjoyed this presentation. I hope you like learning about the album. And please check out the links below and keep supporting Super Kami Guru Alucard. Till next time, sayonara, minasan, domo arigato, matane.